So, I have booked myself a little staycation, and I thought I would take the time to talk about what I've learned in my second high risk pregnancy. So, I'm 21 weeks pregnant. I have two high risk surgeries under my belt for just this pregnancy, and I thought that I had learned everything that I needed to know in my first high risk pregnancy, and yet somehow this one still managed to prove me wrong. So, my first high risk pregnancy, it was very intense from the very beginning. I had HG from the jump. HG is hyperemesis gravidarum. It's been described as really bad morning sickness, but essentially I could not tolerate much food at all for my entire pregnancy. Pretty much couldn't keep a lot of stuff down, but frozen fruit, sips of water, definitely not all the crap that people tell you to have, like dry biscuits and ginger and all those things. Yeah, weren't working for me. So I ended up losing a lot of weight in my pregnancy instead of getting those like very womanly curves that come with pregnancy. I actually ended up losing maybe around 8 or 9 kilos, and so I was very tiny. HG was bad, and I thought that was like the worst thing that would happen to me during my pregnancy. I was wrong because at 16 weeks, my cervix dilated, so it opened, and then it also funneled, so it shortened. I lost my mucus plug, and I had to have an emergency stitch put in place to try and keep my cervix closed, and try and save the pregnancy. So the rest of that pregnancy, I was pretty much in and out of the hospital weekly for ultrasounds and just monitoring pain. And I was told when I had the cerclage that we wanted to make sure that it got to like 5 weeks beyond that, because it was like trying to keep the stitch in place, and we didn't want it to rip. So those 5 weeks were the most crucial. And so when we got to the 5 weeks, it was great. Got to 21 weeks, was really happy. And I was on bed rest this entire time, but I was a little bit naughty, and I had a little bit more activity than I probably should have had at the time. And so at 24 weeks, my waters broke. So it was due, at the time, we thought it was due to something called chorioamniocentesis. So I was diagnosed with that, which is essentially, I'm going to have to look at notes because I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So it's essentially when there's an infection of the membranes that surround the babies during pregnancy. So basically, the protective environment around the baby became infected because bacteria from the vagina had come into contact with it, so it had moved up the uterus and come into contact with it. And so when your cervix is closed and your mucus plug is there, you have things blocking it, so the bacteria from your vagina isn't coming into contact with your uterus. Since my cervix was dilated and I'd lost my mucus plug, the bacteria from my vagina had come into contact with the uterus, which is supposedly why I went into preterm labor at 24 weeks. So the environment was a very hostile one. There was no more water, so I completely, when I broke my waters, it was gone. And at that point, they gave me steroids. So once they cut that stitch, my daughter hightailed it out of there, and the next day, her foot came out in the toilet. and they pushed her back up, and 10 minutes after that she was born via C-section, which was very delightful. The last thing I remember before being knocked out was this obese fist going up my vagina to push her back in, which was a story of its own, but not a story for today. Anyway, so that was my first pregnancy. As chaotic as it was, I didn't know any different, so I really didn't think too much into it. Like, it was just like, oh, this is my crazy. I didn't know what normal pregnancies were like, for the most part, until later when I spoke to other people about their pregnancies and knew more about what happened during theirs, that were very uneventful in comparison to mine. So then that was that. Actually forgot about a lot of it, but I felt like coming into this next pregnancy that I was going to be prepared, that I knew everything, like I'd experienced it all. I knew what my body was capable of. I knew that I had an incompetent cervix, which is why it dilated and shortened. I knew that I had HG, and the reoccurrence of HG is like 80% or something. So this time, yeah, I thought that I was so prepared for this, and this pregnancy kind of started the same. HG came along, hot and heavy, was losing weight, couldn't keep much food down, throwing up all the time. But this time it was a little bit different because I had a 4-year-old to look after, and so when I was throwing up this time, I had someone to rub my back. And I just kept thinking, I am probably traumatizing this poor girl. And I hope that she's exposed to other pregnancies to see how normal and uneventful it can be, because mine just wasn't uneventful. So first 12 weeks of this pregnancy, I'm in and out of the hospital again, not only with HG to get fluids because of the constant dehydration, but I also had a ruptured cyst and a subchorionic hematoma. So I was bleeding and had a lot of bleeding, and actually ended up passing like clots the size of mandarins, like literally not very small. And it was terrifying, and most of the time when I went to the toilet I didn't know what I was going to see, which made it really, really, really chaotic. It made the first 12 weeks of this pregnancy it wasn't fun at all. And so here I was thinking, oh, I'm so prepared. I was like, it actually ended up being like, what more could happen? Because I've got the HG, I've got the cervical incompetence. Why now am I also bleeding and having these scares? So that wasn't fun. And then we got ahead of the cervical insufficiency this time by having a preventative stitch put in place at 13 weeks, and that went really well. I thought that was going to be the end of it, and that was going to be me getting into the swing of just like normal pregnancy for me, which was like pretty much just bed rest. And then just 3 weeks after that cervical stitch was put in place, I started having these really familiar tightenings, which I had experienced in my first pregnancy with my daughter when she was about to come. So it wasn't a very nice feeling. And I went into hospital. They admitted me for monitoring, and just a few days later we found out that my stitch that had been put in just 3 weeks earlier had actually ripped front to back, which was, yeah, not fun. And so we ended up doing a couple tests just to see that there was no infection. They monitored me for a while, and then I had a new stitch put in place, with the hopes that this didn't happen again. And this stitch was put up a lot higher. I was admitted into hospital for about 5 weeks, which was very, very torturous, especially because I had a 5-year-old at home. But somehow we managed, and since then things have been okay. I'm now 21 weeks pregnant. I've been in the hospital a little bit, but baby's healthy, and I'm just kind of taking it day by day. So one of the biggest things I've learnt in this pregnancy is that when you have such little control over your circumstances, it's really important to have a very good support network. And it's just not one of those things that I really took much note. I really kind of took advantage of in my first pregnancy. So In my first pregnancy, I kind of just put all the it was just me and daddy going side by side. Mummy and daddy are dealing with this. We're like going through this together, and it's us against the world. Whereas this time, I realized you can't all put all the stress and um, just all of the weight of this on one person, because your husband, your partner, daddy's also in this with you, and he's already dealing with his own feelings about not being able to actually take this from you, or to take the pain from you. And so it's been such a blessing to have people around me, women around me, sisters, who have been through this, who just want to be around and want to love and dote on me and the baby, um, and um, that's really important. I have some notes, so I'm going to look at some of my notes, because otherwise I'm just not going to remember them. And so you need a wider team, like people who can actually hold you when you're holding so much during this time. And then I've also really learnt to listen to my body. If I hadn't listened to my body this time round, I would be running and um, just going about it as though I don't have the body that I have. And last time I let the doctors take the lead in everything around this, because it was such unfamiliar territory for me, and whereby this time I've had questions, I've asked the questions, I've trusted myself, and trusted my experience in my body. And if I hadn't done that, I also wouldn't have known um, when this was all happening with my stitch, when my stitch was tearing. I wouldn't have known that that was happening. I wouldn't have taken much notice. But since I was actually listening to my body this time and trusting my body, I knew that I had to go into the hospital pretty much straight away as soon as I had these like tightenings again. So I think that's really important, to have an understanding of your own body and listening to your own body, and not going at other people's pace or the doctor's pace or whatever, but going at your own pace, because the way that we see it is that nobody else is going to um, support or want our baby more than we are. So um, I just have to be mindful of that, and just reminding myself of that I don't have the same body as everyone else, and that I should listen to my body and trust what it's communicating with me. And so that level of self-trust has really made a huge difference. I've also learnt the importance of celebrating every single win, especially when you're going through something like HG, when you're constantly sick. I'm sick every day, and it's really hard to stay positive. In my first pregnancy, I let everything just kind of overwhelm me, and this time I really don't want that to be the case. So considering I'm pretty much always sick, depleted, disconnected, I realize that the tiniest wins matter. So it's, if I wake up and I have like 3 hours without feeling sick, I'm celebrating. If I've gained half a kilo, celebrating. If I'm keeping a couple meals down, I'm celebrating. Um, you just have to enjoy those small wins, um, because when every day is a really slow day, slow and pretty painful, it helps keeping you mentally strong. And this time I have to be mentally strong, because I have another child who is already Earthside, who is relying on me. So yeah, celebrating the wins. And then I guess also it's easy to get stuck in countdown mode. And so one of the other things, I guess, which kind of ties in with celebrating every win is trying to remain really present and doing things that kind of anchor you to the present, so you're not always like counting down the hours. So for me, that's reading, it's spending time with my daughter, it's having time outside, enjoying nature, having family dinners together, just doing what we need to enjoy the now, and not just look towards the end of the 40 weeks or however long this pregnancy is going to be. So that's really important, is just remaining present. So sometimes you really have to claw the good out of the hard days. And as I said, this was something that I really didn't do with my last pregnancy. I just let everything overwhelm me and like the ground swallow me whole, metaphorically. But really you have to cling to the good. So whereby last time I didn't reach out to a support system because I didn't think that they could understand, and maybe they couldn't, but I also didn't give them the chance to even try and listen. So this time I really did it differently. I joined hyperemesis support groups early. I didn't need to post or vent or share my whole story. Sometimes I just needed to scroll and feel validated by other people who were going through exactly the same thing as I was, and seeing that I wasn't alone, that other women were battling with the same brutal symptoms, the same dismissiveness, or having people be dismissive of it and saying it's just morning sickness and just have a cracker, you'll be okay. Like, just have some ginger biscuits or ginger tea and it'll be fine. That has really helped keep me sane, and I couldn't recommend it enough for other people who are going through this, especially when you have like a couple different things that are a struggle. So for me, I had the hyperemesis support groups, and then I also have like a incompetence cervix forums that I have a look at just to keep myself positive, and also mindful that I'm not the only person going through this. So as to not be such a drama queen, not a drama queen, but to not be so, I guess, dramatic and like just bogged down by everything. So I think those are the things that have really made the difference this time. Now look, I know that this situation isn't the norm, and that every day women are carrying their babies to full term and have their own worries around labour, and I wish that my biggest problem was thinking about who's going to be in the room with me when I labour, and what music is going to be part of my birthing space. But that's not my reality, and I've learned to really lean into the chaos of it all, clawing out the good from the hard days. And the thing that really keeps me going is I have this really strong kind of knowing that I have very strong babies, and that I have this, like for this pregnancy, I have this week in my mind that I'm getting to, and regardless of everything that's happening, my mind is on my very healthy baby and the week that we're getting to, and everything else is just me riding the waves of the chaos of high-risk pregnancy, and accepting my body and just being really grateful that it's even been able to produce these two strong babies. I hope this hasn't been boring. Like, it's been very long-winded and I had the time, so I thought that I would do the sharing. And there are so many other little bits and pieces that I could share on around high-risk pregnancies, around cervical insufficiency, around HG, and the chaos of it all, that I'm really happy to share. Really, really happy to share. So let me know if you have any questions that I can answer, since I've become very familiar about these really niche topics over the course of my last 2 pregnancies. I'd be happy to answer them. And please, if you have any ideas for videos around all this fun stuff, let me know.